isn't your church a Christian church? Our church is based on everybody being a child of God. When we were formed originally in 1908, the Universal Church of the Master had Christian principles, and so you could go to a UCM church all over the United States, and some of them are going to be very Christian, some of them are going to be goddess related, some of them are going to be, as we are, multi-faith. And you might think, well, why aren't they all the same? Because not every one of you is all the same. We have people who attend here and that are Islamic, Jewish, Christian, Buddhist, who were raised Catholic, Mormon, many, many different faiths. And they're looking for something that's more inclusive, not exclusive. And for that reason, we're so glad. Thank you. Am I getting some water from back there? All I have is an empty cup.
You're welcome.
Well, what happened is I was sitting there listening to this beautiful meditation. I guess what was next to me? Chocolate. And what's a girl to do? So I found out it kind of lodges in your throat. So Annie is one of these people who was raised Jewish, and she is here to light the menorah and also do the service. So please welcome Reverend Ann Corbin. No, it's going between my legs.
I see that. I can see that.
Woohoo!
Okay.
Most action I've had for a while.
Corky.
I know. I apologize.
You know, it's interesting because Dottie actually is one of the people that encouraged me to go back to my heritage. Because I truly am belief in earth religions and earth spirituality, and I believe in oneness and the goddess, and I believe in it all. But, you know, in reality, when I started studying Jewish, history, I found out that they were considered pagans, and I thought, oh my gosh, I guess I am in the right place, right? So today is the first day of Hanukkah, and if you believe what the History Channel's website says, Hanukkah actually means dedication. And I think that makes perfect sense, because what Hanukkah is about is the rededication of the Second Temple in Jerusalem back in about the 166 or so BC. Now, interestingly enough, it started off with around 200 BC, Antiochus the third was, king of the Syrian type of nation and the Greek and so on. And he got along very well with Matthias, who was Judah Maccabee's father. They did great. He allowed the Jews to continue their religious celebrations. He allowed them to keep their temple. He allowed them to keep things the way that they were going to be. Well, when Antiochus III passed away and his son, the fourth, took over, he wasn't so nice. He was not so benevolent. He decided that everybody was going to worship the way he wanted them to worship. He forced people to bow down to the Greek gods. They actually set up in the temple. They completely tore apart the temple, and they utilized it as a place to worship Zeus. And they were sacrificing pigs in the temple. And as those of you who know that kosher people do not eat pig for certain reasons. So, they were not allowed to worship. And so how did they get away with this? Well, first off, Matthias had 5 sons, but his son, Judah Maccabee, is what they called him. Judah, he took over as the leader. And by the way, Maccabee means the hammer, because he hammered everything back together, and he put things back. So there was a rebellion, but at first the way that they rebelled was through a very different manner. The way that they rebelled was they would learn the Talmud, and they would learn the Torah, and they would learn different lessons of Judaism based upon using the dreidel, or what they call sevevon. They would use the dreidel, and they would sit down and use it as a way of gambling It's a game. Each of the Hebrew letters on here means either, the same, more, less, so it means something that has to do with, how much nuts or fruits or chocolate nowadays, Hanukkah gelt, people get. So when they spin the dreidel, while they were spinning the dreidel, they would talk about the lessons of the Torah. Very quietly. As we all know, every spiritual path, it seems like there's somebody who wants to kill them because they don't believe what everybody else they think they should be believing. Jews aren't any different than anybody else. They just happen to be one of the older religions, and so they've been picked on a lot. And, as have, people who worship the goddess, people who are into Allah, people who are into different paths. And we all had to find that way. But the story of Hanukkah is that they fought back. So after the rebellion, after a while, when they would play the dreidel and they would do things to worship through secret ways, they finally decided to have an uprising. And Judah Maccabee led them in this. And Judah Maccabee and his tribes came and they helped to take over and defeat the Greeks, the Syrians that were trying to take everything over for them. And so what they did was they finally got everybody out of that temple and they cleaned out the temple and they wanted to do a rededication. This was in approximately 166 BC, and or as we say today, BCE, before Common Era as opposed to before Christ. But it's one way or the other, it's the same thing. And they had an amazing thing that occurred because they only had 1 day's worth of clean oil. And they had to lock themselves in the temple while the rest of the fight went on. And then when everything was done, they wanted to rededicate. And so they closed down the temple and had the people in there to do the rededication. But they only had 1 day's worth of clean oil. And they thought for sure that all they would have is just that 1 day. But the miracle that occurred was that the oil lasted 8 full nights.
Was that for their lamps or for food?
It was for their lamps. Mm-hmm. And so it kept the place lit up for 8 nights. And how did that happen? We don't know. Miracles are an interesting thing, aren't they? So what we do is in Hanukkah, by the way, is not mentioned in the Old Testament. And the reason why is because the Old Testament was already written by the time this occurred. But in the New Testament, there's a mention of Jesus going to a festival of dedication. That was Hanukkah. So it did exist, and it is mentioned in the Bible, just not as this important story. And yet is also seen as one of the least important factors in Jewish history. It's become very Americanized as the days go along. All the children get Christmas gifts, and Jewish kids went, well, what do we get? So they got 8 nights of gifts. And, I don't know about anybody else that was raised Jewish, but usually it was like a pair of socks on night 1. Night 2 you might get some mittens, It wasn't really exciting gifts, but there was always one big gift I think that we would always get towards the end. And I think we had to wait until the 8th day, when we were going to get the big gift. And I also, because my father passed away when I was 5 years old, my biological father, my mother married a Gentile. So he brought Christmas into our household too. So I used to get Christmas and Hanukkah. I wasn't quite a cashew like Jan, but because he wasn't Catholic, I think he came from a Protestant family, but I don't even know because he wasn't that religious, but he was definitely believed in God. And so we always still kept the tradition of lighting the menorah. Now this specific menorah, most menorahs only have 7 places to light. This is called a Hanukkah menorah. Hanukkah menorah means it's for the Hanukkah time period. I have a menorah that has 7, 3 on each side and 1 in the center that Dottie gave to me many years ago, that I use it for a daily lighting the candles. But at Hanukkah, you pull out the Chanukiah. And this one is, it was handed to me by my mom. She asked me once if I only got one thing from her when she dies, what do I want? And I said I wanted the menorah. I don't know why, I've always felt an attachment to this menorah. And she said, well, you can take it before I die. So
Yay, okay.
I'm just dropping my candle here, but just to hold it up. It's a beautiful, beautiful Hanukkah menorah, and I keep it in my house, and it's out actually all the time.
And that's the picture that's in your program?
Yes.
It's a picture of that.
And lit up with I think we had all 8 lights lit that time when you did that. So you'll notice that there's more than 8 lights. There's 4 on this side and 4 on this side, and then 1 in the center. The one in the center is called the shamas candle, and it represents that one little drop of oil that was good, that lasted 8 nights. So on the first night of Hanukkah, which is today, so we're only going to light 1 candle, you light 1 candle, but you always use the shamas candle as the original candle to light it with. You light it first, you sing the blessing, or you light the candle, you put this back, and you sing the blessing. Then on the second night of Hanukkah, you'll have the shamas and 2 candles, then the shamas and 3, so on and so forth until you reach the 8th night. Usually done at sunset. Most Jewish holidays start at sunset the night before and on sunset the night of the last night. So it's really it's a beautiful thing that we do, and I love the opportunity to do it because here is usually the only place I end up lighting my Hanukkah, but I love to come and share it every year and have you be a part of it. So let's light this, and then we'll talk a little bit more about some miracles, okay? The other thing you might notice is that you start as I'm facing it, it's to my left, but as you're facing it, it's to your right, because in Hebrew you read from right to left. Don't want that to fall. Yeah. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Hanukkah. I believe a rough translation is that, blessed art thou, O Lord, our God. Thank you for giving us the freedom to light the candles of Hanukkah. The Barucha is said before many different Jewish holidays. You sing a Barucha for Passover, there's a Barucha for, but it's a blessing, and that's what Barucha means, is blessing. So blessed art thou. These will burn down pretty quickly, maybe by the time I'm done talking today. But that's the story of Hanukkah. But really, it's a story of a miracle, and a miracle that occurred. These 4 Hebrew letters represent a great miracle happened here, if you're in Israel, or a great miracle happened there, if you're not inside Israel. I don't know which is which. Sadly, I never learned to read Hebrew, but I do know which one is which as far as the game of dreidel goes. You'll notice also these ones open up. As for putting gelt in there. Does anybody know what Hanukkah gelt is? It's not guilt, it's Hanukkah gelt.
Chocolate.
G-E-L-T, not G-U-I-L-T.
Chocolate.
Little chocolate coins. That's right. Yeah.
It's
And so you
chocolate.
play for gelt. And wouldn't it be great, we used to get these dreidels, and they would always come filled with Hanukkah gelt. I love that. I think we have some Hanukkah gelt in our Hanukkah box, but it's probably about 15 years old at this point. So I don't think anybody wants to eat the Hanukkah gelt, okay? So,
Patricia Caldera has chocolate on her.
okay, well thank you, Patricia, because what would we do without that? So miracles. Miracles happen every single day. We are each a miracle, each and every one of us, right?
Yes.
Okay? Every single one of us was born. We have the right amount of chromosomes for who we are. We have the capability of breathing. Do we know how it is that we breathe? Does our body, do we have to sit there and think, I need to breathe now? No, we don't have to think that. Although when you're having a rough day, I have to say, breathe, you know. I do have to remind myself. But, you know, really, it's a miracle. You breathe, you blink, you do everything of that sort, right? So, and what's amazing in this miracle of humanity is all the different cultures, all the different languages. Yet all of us are human. All of us are the same. How was it that we had black skin and brown skin and yellowish skin and you know and the beauty of all the different cultures and all the different traditions? Isn't that a miracle? Nobody said, you know, okay, you guys are going to speak Swahili, and you guys are going to speak Hebrew, and you guys are going to speak this English. Where did those languages come from? Where did they develop? It's a miracle. Every day when you're looking at a person and you are, you know, smiling at them, and maybe you help somebody, you know, here, let me pick that up for you. You drop this on the ground. Here, let me do this for you. You are creating a miracle in their life. We are all miracles. The fact that the sun sets every night and it rises every morning and the moon comes out and that the earth does its, you know, orbit around the sun. And all the planets are orbiting around the sun. And how is it that they don't get mixed up and go the wrong way and bash into each other? It's a miracle. It's not Highway 101. This is true. It's not Highway 101. It's, you know, and so how is it that all of that happens? And miracles happen in people's lives every single day. I believe in angels. I believe in guidance. I believe that we all have somebody or some spirit or more that helps us. So I'll talk a little bit about that in a second, but really, let's think about some more miracles. The miracle of nature. How can a one little itty-bitty, teeny-tiny seed create a gigantic tree? How can an apple feed us? And how did we figure out? Probably a few people got poisoned. How did we figure out which were the good fruits and which weren't? How did we know which ones were the right things to eat? How do we know how to take care of a baby? Did we, you know, we weren't taught, I don't know about you, but my kid did not come with any kind of instruction manual, okay? And you know, the only thing I knew to do was, you know, you got to support the head, right? I mean, you know, of course I babysat from the time I was 9 years old, so I knew all of this stuff when my son was born. But the first time you hold a brand new child, a brand new baby, what do they always say? You know, make sure to support their neck, support their head, right? But how did we know to do that? You know, it's just everything is a miracle. The ocean. How is it that the moon controls the ocean? How is it that gravity works here, and yet at other planets there's no gravity? Can we call that a miracle? I think we can call that a miracle. I think we can call all of those kinds of things a miracle. And I believe that there's stories of miracles in every single belief system that there is. And I'd love it if we could put together maybe even a book of miracles sometime, of, you know, miracles that occurred within different, you know, religious or different spiritual organizations and things. So I mean, I think about being guided. And I think I've told this story before, but to me it was a miracle. I was driving to Oregon. I was in a rental car. And I had a cassette tape that was playing, you know, it was music, whatever. And I wanted to change lanes. And it was fairly busy on the freeway. Even though it was like 4 o'clock in the morning, there were still a lot of people on the road. And I decided I was going to change lanes. So I turned on my signal, and I started to change the lanes, and then I looked over my shoulder. And there was someone in my blind spot. And I pulled back really fast, and my car started to spin. And all of a sudden, there was nobody on the freeway. my car spun and moved all over to the median and landed facing the correct way.
Wow.
Completely missed. And there was nobody on the freeway. Nobody. They all disappeared.
Wow.
Every single one of them. And I sat there for a moment, and I took a moment to say thank you to Spirit, to angels, to whoever it was that saved my life at that moment. I took a nice deep breath, and I pulled back out on the road again, turned my music back on, and a song came on that's called Take Your Time. Amazing how those things happen. And then the moment that I heard that song and I smiled and I laughed, then there was traffic on the freeway again. When my brother, my youngest brother, was about, I don't know, he must have been, let's see, if Jay was 13, then he was 3, because there a 10-year gap between them. And my brother Jay was at Hebrew school. My mother had taken us all to drop my brother off to Hebrew school. We were all in the car together. And we, those were the days of station wagons, and nobody wore seat belts. And, I don't even think there were seat belts in the cars in those days. I do not believe that there were. And when we got home from dropping my brother off, my kid sister, who was just a year and a half older, so 4.5, she said, "Mommy, I want to close the car door." And so Mommy said, "Okay, go ahead and close the car door." And so I must have been 12, Jay was 13. And we go to get back in the car later to go and pick him up. And I think my sister was in the front seat. My mom put her in the front seat for some reason. And I was in the back seat with my little brother. And my mother made a left-hand turn onto the world's busiest street in our neighborhood. And the door flew open, and my brother fell out.
No.
On his head. I went into shock. I couldn't speak. My mother saw me going, through her rearview mirror, but she had no idea why I was doing that. But she stopped. Out of nowhere came a man who had picked my brother up and brought him to my mother. And my mother didn't think about it at the time, but we talked about it later. She just said, "Give me my baby." It's like, "Just give me my baby." So she was holding my brother, and we get him into the back seat, and I was holding on to him, and we made sure the doors were closed tight. But she turned to say thank you to him, and he was gone. Mm-hmm. Yes, David said he was an angel. I agree. So, we only have a few minutes left, but does anybody have a miracle that's happened in their lives that they would like to share? I see some hands. What's that?
We got 2 minutes.
We got 2 minutes. I got one. Okay, I got Carol and Kathleen.
And one more, Freddie.
Okay, 3. Your name is?
Freddie.
Freddie. Okay.
Hey, Brady.
So I went to Yosemite for the first time when I got to California, and at noon, my car overheated, and this man came and he said, "Would you like me to take water out of my water cooler and cool off your radiator?" I said, "Yes." So he cooled it off. That was at noon. And then at 9 p.m., when I headed 26 miles to my campground, the car overheated again. And I pulled to the side of the mountain, a very narrow little side thing. And I was dark, and I was a woman alone. And the first car that came along, I thought, "Oh no, is he a bad guy or a good guy?" And it was the same guy.
Wow.
The first car. And he cooled down my engine again, and then when we camped in the campground the next morning, I couldn't get my hood shut, and he was walking by, and fixed my hood. And I said, "Are you an angel?" And he said, "Ha ha 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 ha." That's it.
Oh,
That's wonderful. Thank you. That was. He would have said ho ho ho, wouldn't he? Kathleen.
Well, your story reminded me of a time. It reminded me of a time I was traveling with a friend, and we were going to a Zen Buddhist retreat. We were traveling from Wisconsin across Interstate 80, across northern Indiana, Ohio. And I don't know where we were. The Zen Center was in Rochester, New York, and there was a snowstorm. And so we were taking turns driving. She had been driving. I had been asleep, and then. I woke up right when the car was on the freeway, turning around and then facing the wrong direction. Traffic was coming, probably slowly because of the snow, but the guy who had been plowing the other side of the freeway had come over and helped us get, turned around the right direction. So just like the amazing time.
That's cool. Thanks for sharing that. That's awesome.
And Freddie?
And Freddie.
I had surgery. Hi, Freddie.
Hi,
Hi, everybody. I had surgery in a hospital, my college years in Humboldt's wine country, in town up there. When I woke up from surgery, it was stomach surgery. So it was an emergency. Doctor said if you didn't make it here 30 minutes more, the blood would have gone throughout my body into all the internal organs. So 30 minutes later, I probably would have lost some organs. He said, you got here just in time. I said, no, he knocked me out, and he said, do you want surgery? I said, no, I gotta call my mom. He started laughing. He said, son, you don't have an option. You're gonna have to get into the ER room right away. As soon as I woke up, I had the surgery staples from stitches. There was two men holding my hands. They were both older, and I just felt this feeling that was flying through the air, and it was blue. It was like heaven. So I knew I was flying through heaven. Something just was telling me, you're okay. As soon as I woke up, there was these two older gentlemen. They were seniors, and I just felt this awesome feeling from both of them. Both of them were smiling at me. I was in the hospital room. As soon as they walked away, as soon as I was able, a few days later, I looked around for them. Never saw the two men ever again. So I knew they were angels sent to the hospital. And I asked nurse, have you seen these two gentlemen? Did you see the two men? She actually said, no, I don't know who you're talking about.
Thank you so much, Freddie, for sharing that. So I want to remind you all, those of you that remember Virginia's scene, what does she say we are?
We are the light of the world.
We are the light of the world. Be the light every day. Shine your most beautiful self and create a miracle each and every day of your life. Thank you so much.
Yay, thank you.